I have just accepted Her Majesty the Queen's kind invitation to form a new government.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's fantastic to be back. In this new era, we're taking a new approach. It will be uncensorable and uncancelable. We can't give in to those who say we can't do better. That is a disgrace. We can make the West great again. The status quo is not an option.
Welcome to the Liz Truss Show Podcast. I'm here in Palm Beach, which, as well as having some of the best golf in the world, this island off the coast of Florida has been the epicenter of the US counter-revolution. It's created a counter-elite who've been prepared to take on the liberal establishment, which is currently destroying the West. There's been an exodus from cities like New York and Los Angeles, and the people have come here to Palm Beach because it is different. There are also a lot of Brits fleeing the terrible weather and the even worse political climate of non-stop wokery, human rights orthodoxy, Islamism, and economic stagnation. In order to take on the British liberal establishment, we will have to have, in our country, a similar group to the people in Palm Beach. We will need our own version of this Florida enclave. It's got to be a place where people who believe in our country can congregate, where they are trained up and recruited and red-pilled into how tough the battle we have is to fight. The same is true of other countries in Western Europe, like France and Germany. Marco Rubio made a fantastic speech at the Munich Security Conference last week, talking about how right across the West, in America and Europe, there have been people appeasing a climate cult and who have opened our doors to an unprecedented wave of mass migration. We can see in America the fight back has actually started and is taking place, and the battle is ongoing. In this episode of the Liz Truss Show, I talked to Paul de Quenoy of the Palm Beach Freedom Institute about what we can learn from Palm Beach and where in Britain we can have a similar base for our counter-revolution to be able to take on the liberal establishment that has destroyed our countries. Please subscribe to the Liz Truss Show wherever you get your podcasts. I'm here in Palm Beach with Paul de Quenoy of the Palm Beach Freedom Institute. Great to have you on the show, Paul.
Wonderful to be here, Liz. Thank you.
We're talking today about the counter-revolution and how Palm Beach has been the home of the counter-revolution in the US. After you had all the woke policies under Obama, under Biden, the takeover of the deep state, the counter-revolution, where the deep state was taken on, a lot of it actually happened here in Palm Beach. Do you want to say a bit more about that, Paul?
100%. I am very proud to say that we started the Palm Beach Freedom Institute in 2021 specifically to be a counter-revolutionary organization. Our original manifesto, which was not published by the Wall Street Journal because they thought we were too belligerent, said that the counter-revolution starts here. Simply put, despite all the recent talk we've had about Palm Beach being the center of the universe, we're a place where no one can touch us, nobody can be canceled, we can say exactly what we please. We're situated in the free state of Florida. President Trump's official address, home address, is here in Palm Beach at Mar-a-Lago. And we do what we like. We say what we please. We have no particular prohibitions on what we can do and say. And one of the reasons we were founded was that we found that the Northern Conservative Institutes, the ones situated in Washington and New York, would come once a year, give incredibly boring presentations, go back to their homes, and then do nothing. Precisely nothing, leaving us to wonder whether Palm Beach should have a voice in national politics. And after an especially bad evening of this, I turned to a friend of mine who had invited me that evening and said, Bob, we should really have our own discussion group here in Palm Beach. And he said, no, we should have an institute. You should be the president of it, and we should carry on from there. We never imagined it would go far beyond our own local discussion, but in fact, we have become a force of state, national, indeed even international significance.
Fantastic. And in your experience of building up this force here in Palm Beach, of actually being able to get things done in the United States, what advice do you have for Britain? Because the people of Britain are pretty clear that we need a counter-revolution. We had the Blair Revolution that has created the mess we're in today in every issue, from economic stagnation to mass migration to the threat of Islamism. How would you start if you were to set up a Palm Beach type place in Britain?
Pick a location where no one's going to bother you. Go out into the shires, recruit a bunch of retired lieutenant colonels and numbers of whites. I'm having dinner at Whites tomorrow night in London, so I feel free to say that. People who have a stake in the country and its future, but who also have no reason to fear. People who have very little to lose. People who feel that they can take on the malign forces in their society with conviction, with ferocity, to keep fighting constantly, to suffer no setbacks, to talk very candidly with each other about what needs to happen in Britain, what has happened in the United States, and all the wonderful things that can be achieved just by people doing things. Edmund Burke's Little Platoons started somewhere, and it was in your country, not mine.
And do you have an example of the kind of things the Palm Beach Freedom Institute has done that is antithetical to the traditional Washington-based think tank that needs to happen in Britain?
100%. When we see cases of cancellation, we act. We don't just shrug our shoulders and say, oh, that's how it is now, or harumph, that's just the way it is. We can complain about it. We take direct action. We call people out on their misdeeds. We make sure that they understand what they've done is bad. We inspire other people to come forward and denounce. We're constantly in motion, active as activists, as people who care about our society and its future, making sure that these horrible things don't happen, that they're reversed, that they're cast out of our community, and that they have no role in our society.
And what forces do you think you are now fighting in the US? Because President Trump is making a massive difference on everything from immigration to the economy, but the United States establishment is still there. They haven't got away. They're still well-funded. How do you take those people on?
We wear them down. We go through litigation. We use the law. We use the courts. We use the powers that conservative politicians have in office that they sometimes don't even realize that they have.
Or sometimes they don't want to use them.
Sometimes they don't want to use. We go after establishment politicians. We have a lot of terrible names for them.
Come on, let's have a few of the names.
The big one is Cuck. Squish, it would be another one. Sometimes even simply calling them moderates these days is enough to make sure that they're unelectable or disempowered. We did a huge drive to make sure that very qualified people who thought as we did were installed in the Trump administration in various places. That's something that I think if there's a reform government in the UK, the Reform Party will need to do that.
How can those people be identified, Paul, in Britain? Because you spend quite a bit of time in Britain. Do you see those people? Are they being mobilized at the moment?
They're not being mobilized at the moment, but we certainly see them. And I think it just comes down to a series of questions. Here, we looked at how people voted in past elections. Have you supported President Trump and his agenda from the beginning in 2016? Or are you somebody who just came along now? I think you have a very opposite comparison in Britain. You could ask people how they voted on Brexit.
Fair enough.
People voted against Brexit, and I think I'm getting into dangerous waters here.
Well, not at all, because I would describe myself as having been red-pilled by years in the UK government, because I went in 2010 thinking that all that was needed was sensible people with the right policies who could actually get things done. And over time, I realized that the battle was much bigger than that our enemies were actually prepared to use subversive tactics to take it on. And what I saw in the aftermath of Brexit, and I was very clear once the vote had happened that we should implement the will of the British people, is I saw the deep state actively fighting to stop that happening. And they're still there. Now, if you look at what's happening with Keir Starmer now in Britain, he is trying to overthrow the will of the British people. and go back with Europe. And to me, Europe is more than just a entity that we do or don't want to be part of. It's actually a metaphor for the wider idea that it's the elites who have expertise who should run things rather than the public being able to have a say. And what I think a counter-revolution needs is it needs a different establishment. That's essentially what you're trying to create here, isn't it?
That is, to a degree, what we have created here in Palm Beach. We were the number 3, the Palm Beach Freedom Institute, I'm very proud to say, was the number 3 recommender of personnel for the Trump administration by volume. He got lovely notes asking us where we found all these delightful people who would carry out the president's agenda. And you will find this, I think, in the UK as well. He'll be out in the provinces. There will be landed people. There will be people who previously would have probably gone along, as you had earlier in your career, with the establishment parties and its policies, but who are now mad as hell, who are angrily in favor of reform, who favor President Trump, who want a traditional Britain, who want their country back, who want to make Britain great again. These people are there. They exist in large numbers. They're just largely not in London.
That's true. London is, if you like, it's all of the cultural elites, it's the political elites, it's the financial elites, and they've all mixed in one big woke melting pot.
It's like New York and Washington combined in one.
And LA. Don't forget LA. It's all 3 of them.
I wish I could forget LA, but it's like New York, Washington, and LA mixed into one. But there are places in the UK where you can find solid people who will do the work that is necessary.
Just from your tours of the UK, where would you identify in the UK that is most spiritually like Palm Beach?
Palm Beach is a very unique place. To say that there's a place like it, you might have to go to Brighton.
But that's one of the wokest places in Britain. That has the Greens running the council.
It's a planned resort community here. And if you have a planned resort community like that, I would say probably Surrey, that would be a good place to go. Places that are maybe even a bit removed from there, I would go north to Lincolnshire.
I think you're beginning to hit on the target now. You're beginning to identify areas where I think there are people who would be supporting President Trump.
Oh, certainly. Supporting President Trump, this is what you'll find in the formerly Labour constituencies in the north and on the North Sea coast. But a place exactly like Palm Beach, well, there really is no place exactly like Palm Beach. And
well, the weather isn't good enough. I mean, it's 28 degrees at the moment here in Palm Beach, and the weather just is never as good as that.
The other mix of people would never be good enough. And even Americans tend to think that Palm Beach is an enclave of clueless, wealthy people who vote for Democrats. It's not true at all. We went 68% for President Trump as a town in the last election.
And people are moving in here, aren't they?
People are moving in. The people who are coming from the north are, by a margin of 2-1, disaffected Republicans. And the Democrats among them are very quickly converted through a kind of osmosis or peer pressure. They give up their old convictions or find out how pleasant life is in Florida. It is a great alternative to the so-called blue states, where people are heavily taxed, heavily regulated, where there's a lot of crime, where they're governed by Islamo-communists like Zoran Mandani or leftist liberal wackos like Gavin Newsom in California. Come here to Florida for Ron DeSantis, for Palm Beach living, for self-reliance. And yes, for Florida Man. That's the name of my column on Newsmax, Florida Man. And this is the experience you'll have. I think every British person concerned with reforming the country should come visit Florida at least once.
Well, I certainly recommend a visit to Palm Beach because there's so much energy and there's so much ideas here which have translated into changing the country.
The most interesting people in the world come here and live in very close proximity to each other. And that has created this great synergy that we felt here in the Palm Beach Freedom Institute. It's a meteoric and explosive rise. And in just 5 years, we've risen from a cocktail party notion to a major force in our national politics and now to advising politics in other countries, including yours.
So where do you think the most likely counter-revolution is to take place in Europe? Which country do you see being on the verge of actually overthrowing the woke policies, the mass migration, the economic stagnation, the climate change nonsense, where do you see in Europe that you visited as being closest?
I would like to say France, which has national elections next year, presidential elections, where nearly half the country actually want to restore the monarchy. In addition to, never mind voting in the Assemblée Nationale, I think Austria is very close. Their elections in 2 years. But right now, their National Conservative Party is at about 40%, whereas their traditional conservatives are a basket case, much like the conservatives in the UK. I think you'll see movement in Portugal, and probably also in Spain. People are just fed up in those countries. And then you were already seeing in places like Hungary, of course, has been going for a long time. But the Czech Republic's new government, the new government in Slovakia, Meloni's surviving government in Italy, I think these are all becoming counter-revolutionary regimes.
And what about the UK? How far behind America are we?
I think you're probably where we were about 5 years ago, at the end of Trump's first term, when President Trump hadn't quite realized the problems that they...
So we've got 4 years of Biden.
You've got 4 years of Biden, and also I think that's just over 3 years until mandatory elections in the UK, although the fate of Prime Minister Starmer may accelerate that process. Well,
I think another stooge will just be put in his place. I mean, it's not... The Labour Party aren't going to be turkeys that vote for Christmas.
They will hold on forever. And your next election could be in 29, but I think that's actually a good opportunity because you will need that time to build the infrastructure and recruit the personnel that you'll need for an effective reform government. If it happened tomorrow, even if you had all of it, do you even have enough reform people running for office who could run for all those parliamentary seats? Probably not. Do you have any representation in the House of Lords? No. You could build that up.
But for me, the biggest issue is actually the deep state, is the bureaucracy. People focus on the MPs, but the people with real power, the people that control the personnel, that control the budgets, are the bureaucrats. It's the head of the Treasury. It's the head of the Home Office. We
realized that here, and we identified a lot of people who were able to take on those jobs. Here, they're largely by presidential appointment, but there's no reason you can't change that in the UK through a reform of your own Civil Service Act or a repeal of your constitutional legislation since the 1990s, where you can install friendly faces.
Absolutely, but these people need to be recruited, don't they?
Yeah. And you have the time to do it. You have more than 3 years now. Let me know how I can help.
Well, I think the Palm Beach Freedom Institute needs to be on the front line of this battle.
I'd love to do this. This is what I live for. This is why I wake up every day. This is what I do with my life. I'm very fortunate in that I'm independent and don't rely on any sort of conventional employment. But yeah, this is something that we can do for you, and something I hope we'll have helping out in the UK and other places in Europe.
Because ultimately, the advantage of the UK is we're now not part of the EU. And this is the trouble that the French are going to have, that the Germans are going to have, that the Italians are going to have, are things like the ECB, the European Central Bank. I know the power these central banks have, but when they're a supranational central bank that no individual country has sovereignty over, that makes the change even harder.
It will, and I think those are challenges that the individual countries will face in their own ways. I would recommend that those politicians study up on the EU legislation and also on what powers remain nationally, because there are, in each of these countries, ways to subvert and get around EU legislation. Poland, for example, is talking about simply not enforcing it. Why can't France not enforce it? If we had a determined leader.
But we know what happened in Hungary, which is they are paying, I think it's 1 million euros, is it a month, to the EU?
I think it's a day.
Oh my God. But they are paying this money to the EU because they are refusing to follow their mass migration policies.
Being fined that amount, I'm not sure that they're actually paying. Nor should they, frankly. And it is a problem for Orban. Traditionally in his elections, his opponents have been funded by supranational bodies, by people outside of Hungary who don't like him. And the EU has...
Are you talking about George Soros?
I would say George Soros is at the top of it. What's different this time is that the dissenting candidate is from within the ranks of his own movement. So it's very hard to say that he is the globalist leftist because he's been with Fidesz for a long time. But I think if Orban can head that off in April and perhaps win those elections, other European countries can do the same. Hungary's been under a huge amount of pressure. And Hungary's also been going it alone. It was the only country that had a right-wing government for a very long time. And I think another advantage of Hungary and of other EU countries that could have populist governments in the future is that under EU rules, one country's vote can veto legislation throughout the entire bloc. If you had 5 or 6 countries like that, you could really take down this gargantuan.
Then we're really talking about a counter-revolution.
Aren't we just?
Thank you so much, Paul. It's been fantastic to have you on the show.
Thank you.
And it's great to be here in Palm Beach. It's an injection of a bit of freedom, which I badly need after spending quite a lot of time in Britain.
Well, you're always welcome, Liz, and we'll have a great time here keeping the counter-revolutionary flame burning.
It was great to be in Palm Beach and to talk to Paul of the Palm Beach Freedom Institute. What I saw was a huge amount of optimism and excitement about the future in America, and a sense that they are winning the battle against the forces that have done so much to try to destroy Western civilization. What a contrast to the miserablest Britain under Keir Starmer. Raining all the time, but also a non-stop drip, drip, drip of negativity, of a failing state, a stagnant economy, and a demoralized people. What's also interesting about Palm Beach is that these people understand the nature of the fight we face. It's not the same fight that Thatcher and Reagan had in the 80s over economics. This is a fight against people who want to destroy the very basis of what made our countries great. Christianity, free speech, the nation state. These are all ideas that they abhor and will do everything they can to undermine. We need people who are prepared to take on this entrenched establishment. They need to be able to argue, but they also need the infrastructure to be built so that these forces in the blob, in the deep state, can take on. So let's enlist their help in taking on our deep state in Britain and Europe, so that we too can experience the benefits of Palm Beach. For more information about what is wrong with Britain, please read my book, 10 Years to Save the West, available on audiobook and also in a paper copy. And please also subscribe to The Liz Truss Show on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, and on YouTube. Thank you so much for tuning in.